So the recording started. And then just a note for you all, with all these Zoom meetings, there's no need to be on camera. Feel free to sit back, relax, and enjoy the session. I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A if y'all have any questions that come up during Chan's presentation. But with that, I will give it to Chan and she will introduce herself in the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. Welcome to all of our parents to this session. So as Stephen mentioned, my name is Dr. Chan Tai. I am a faculty member in our Department of Communication, and I wear quite a few hats on campus. And one of the hats that I enjoy the most is I direct the faculty who live in the residence halls. And so if you didn't know that, there are faculty who live in each of our 8 residential learning communities, which are our residence halls that serve our first and second year students. So the presentation today will focus on what that RLC means and how it sort of differs from maybe a traditional kind of dorm experience, and really what the faculty member can offer to your student as they transition into their first year at Santa Clara University. And so just a little bit of background on me. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I've been a faculty member here at Santa Clara since 2016. So this fall, it will be my 10th year. I absolutely love working at Santa Clara University. And I think it's because there really is this sort of shared mission and goal of supporting students and helping them develop into whole persons. A second role I hold is that I am the live-in faculty member in Cura RLC, which is housed in Finn Residence Hall. And I've had that role since 2019. So I just completed my 6th year and I love that role. You're going to hear a lot about my experience as I share more about what the RLCs are like. And as of 2 years ago, I was appointed director of the faculty program. So in addition to being the live-in faculty member in one of the residence halls, I also am in charge of all the other faculty who live in the residence halls. And so I know a lot about this program and I'm deeply passionate about it. And I think we have a lot of things set in place to help your students transition academically to Santa Clara this fall. So the reason why we sort of have a slightly different model called a residential learning community is because we have looked at the research, and research shows that successful college students are connected to other things on campus. So this means that they're joining clubs, they're participating in sports, whether that's through athletics or intramurals or just going to the recreation center. They're connected through others in their classes, doing activities, and in their RLCs. So the RLCs are sort of set up to sort of create a space to build connection to other students who live in the same RLC, but also to present other opportunities to get connected on campus. Another key point in a student's first year is that they know how to cope with difficult situations. So do they have coping strategies? Can they build resiliency? And can they seek help from resources that are on campus? The third point is that they utilize their resources. So I've done this long enough where we email students the resources, we have flyers up in the halls, and sometimes they don't pay attention to these things, or sometimes the students don't check emails, or they have seen the flyer or something like that, but they just kind of in the moment don't remember that these resources exist. And that's kind of why we emphasize sort of communicating with parents what these things are, because the number of times I've heard from a student like, oh, well, I forgot that this existed, but my parent went to a webinar over the summer, or my parent remembered this from orientation, and this is why I'm in your office. So this is why I always like to do a webinar like this. And I like to connect with parents at orientation when you come, because us telling you about the resources can also be another channel of communication to get your student to realize that there's this resource on campus. Another, key idea is that some students are afraid to ask for help once they come on campus. And so a parent sort of reminding their student that people at Santa Clara are here to help you and we want to help you, and that these folks are have jobs in all of these different offices because we want to help students. And so this is this third part of reutilizing their resources. We sometimes really need to rely on you folks to remind your student that these things exist. And so we know that these are the things that help students have a successful transition into their first year. And so that's kind of how the RLC program was developed. An RLC is not just a typical dorm, it's a living community where students share the space. Obviously, they live in the same residence hall, but we also try to create academic and other extracurricular activities that are focused on a specific theme to help your student try to achieve these three things that will help them be successful. So again, that's connecting to resources, using the resources, and being connected to other people on campus. And so we do have an intentional focus on the academic component of this experience. So at other universities, some of the residence halls might be built around a specific theme. But here at Santa Clara, we have a live-in faculty member in each of the 8 RLCs. And we facilitate an academic component of the program, which some other universities don't have. So this live-in faculty member part is pretty unique to Santa Clara. And so the reason why we do this RLC program is part of our Jesuit identity. We have a deep commitment here at Santa Clara to sort of nurture communities of engaged scholars and students, and to really promote this Jesuit principle of cura personalis, which is care for the whole person. And so we believe that in order to help students develop as whole persons, we have to create an environment that's supportive, and the support can come from fellow students, a wide range of staff. I have a slide that will share with you who are all the staff who live in the RLCs, as well as a faculty member. And we really want to create opportunities to develop connections with other students, with other communities across campus, connections to the university, others in different kinds of clubs. And so we really use the RLCs sort of as a funnel to introduce students to all of the different ways that they can get connected on campus. And how we do that is we bring the people to the residence hall, because we have noticed that some of our residence halls are pretty nice, and sometimes students don't want to leave them and go out and explore what else is on campus. And so we will host programs, and we'll bring in other organizations from across campus to come into the residence hall and share what they can offer, and actually offer their services directly in the residence hall as well. And so some of the goals that we have for the residential learning communities is they house all of our first and second year students. We try to integrate the academic and extracurricular programming. And so one goal is we want to increase students' interaction with their peers outside of the classroom. And we do that by having social programs in the hall, as well as bringing in different kinds of resources for students to come and learn about, as well as access. We want to connect them to extracurricular activities and resources. So this might mean bringing in some of our folks who work in our advising center to come into the residence hall and provide some academic advising for students, and really to deepen their integration into the university community. So I think showing up at a brand new place with thousands of other students can be quite overwhelming. And so we sort of see this RLC model and using the RLC as the funnel for students as sort of at least a warmer handoff. It's slightly smaller community where they'll get to know folks whose specific roles are there to help support the students' transition. I am a researcher in addition to a faculty member, and this does align with some of my research interests. And so in reading the research, this type of model where we have all of these resources sort of coming into the residence hall has shown success in sort of achieving these goals that we have for our students. And so how do we function? How do the RLCs work? So each RLC has a theme that all the faculty, the professional staff, and the student staff create programs around in that RLC. And as I mentioned, we offer academic and other extracurricular programming that is is aligned with the theme, goals, and mission of that particular RLC. And across the different RLCs, there are common guidelines. So it's not like if your student ends up in my Cura RLC, it's completely different than if they end up in Magis RLC. We do have established guidelines of sort of programming that every RLC has to offer so that every student, no matter what RLC they end up with, will get a similar experience and access and exposure to all of the resources and things that we have on campus. And so here's just a brief sort of overview. Again, you will get this presentation recorded, but each RLC has a faculty member in it. So there are 8 RLCs. On this slide, there's Alpha, Cura, Sci-Fi, and Da Vinci, as well as their theme and what building they're in, and then also which faculty member lives in their hall with these RLCs. And so as you can see, the faculty come from a wide range of different disciplines. In these 4, including my own, I have another colleague from communication who's in sci-fi, which is housed in SWIG. We also have a philosopher and a mechanical engineer. And then in Loyola, Magis, MP, and Unity, we have faculty from child studies, the law school, political science, and Italian studies. So usually the themes, we try to find faculty who align with the themes in the residence hall, but we will try to create programs that align with the theme. So I have a public health background, and so that was sort of why they wanted to put me in Cura, which the theme is care for the whole person. And so we do a lot of thematic programming around caring for yourself. We use the 8 dimensions of well-being. So that's thinking about your physical well-being in addition to your communal or social well-being and your intellectual well-being. However, in Unity, they explore diversity for social and civic engagement. And so our faculty member there, Evelyn Ferraro, has brought in different types of guest speakers. She's done screenings of different documentaries. And so that's sort of how we sort of bring these themes to life through the programming that we offer. So in addition to the faculty member, there is a whole team of live-in staff. You will be learning more about who these team members are and meeting some of them at the orientation session. So there is a resident director who sort of manages the building and the operations of the building. If your student has a problem with their roommate or anything like that, the resident director is someone who can be there to support your student. We also have a team of student community facilitators. So these are students who are also called RAs or resident assistants at other universities, but every student will have a community facilitator who lives in their same floor or wing with them. These community facilitators, we call them CFs for short, will also create programs and will check in on your student periodically and will just be your student's first person that they can ask any question about. And then that community facilitator is very knowledgeable about the resources in the hall and across campus and can always refer your student to any type of resource that they need. We also have someone called a spirituality facilitator in the hall, and it's a graduate student who goes to school at Santa Clara in one of our graduate programs, and they report through our division of mission and ministry. So even though we are a Catholic Jesuit university, the spirituality facilitator is sort of specific to a specific religion. We're not trying to convert anybody to Catholicism. It's more just an extra person in the hallway to sort of act as a mentor. This role has really evolved. I think when we first started, these roles were filled by Jesuit priests, but as we've sort of evolved as an institution, they're now graduate students. And I think the role has really evolved to this is a graduate student who can act as a mentor for your student. So if your student just wants to talk to somebody, they can go seek out the spirituality facilitator. Sometimes the spirituality facilitator will also offer like, hey, do you want to just meet for a coffee? They also host programs and events for de-stress and things like that in the hall. Somewhat new to our university, probably 3 years now, is we have a therapist in residence program. So we actually have therapists who live on campus in the residence hall. So we have 4 therapists in residence, and they each serve 2 of the residence halls. So they're available after hours, so after 5 p.m. So we have a regular counseling, psychology services, and health services organization on campus that's open 9 to 5, typical office hours. But our therapists and residents are available after hours. And so students can schedule same day drop in appointments with our therapists and residents, and their offices are in the residence hall. So students don't have to walk all the way across campus. And they also offer group therapy. And then there's me, the faculty director. And so you will learn more about these other roles in other presentations and at orientation, but I will focus more specifically on the role that I play in my residence hall and the program that I manage, which is the faculty director program. So the faculty directors, are really here to complement all of these other mental health services, sort of social activities that all the other staff in the residence halls offer. And we're here to support student academic success at Santa Clara. So we will create programs that are related to academics. I have another slide that will specifically go into what those academics are. At Santa Clara, we have some of the residence halls have classes called linked classes, where every student who is in that class lives in the same residence hall. And we also share on and off campus resources with the students who live in our hall. And we can also meet one-on-one with students. So I've done this job for 6 years now. And in the fall, within the first 3 weeks, most of the meeting requests I get are, I want to drop a class, but I don't know how to do that. Can you help me? Or I declared this major and now I've taken a few classes for a few weeks and I don't know if I want to do this major anymore. Can I please talk to you? So the faculty member is available for students to make these appointments. We also have sort of weekly like office hours, drop-in hours. And so students can, we kind of hang out in the hall and that's what we're there for. And so I also have a lot of conversations with students as I have dogs in the hall who live with me in the residence hall. So when I'm walking the dogs at night, if a student has a question, I will totally stop and answer it. And I think it's just like we're another adult in the hall who has a lot of experience in academia and knows about the resources across campus. So hopefully, we can be a friendly face to your student if, they just arrived on campus and they don't know what office to go to. That's sort of like the key role that we play, especially in the fall quarter. But throughout the year, we also run a variety of programs. Again, the goal is to use the RLCs as a funnel to introduce students to different types of programs and resources that exist on campus. So we do host programs with our Drawman Advising Center in the fall and winter quarter. As you'll learn at orientation, students will get a lot of support registering for classes at their orientation so that their fall schedule is ready to go. That level, we're not going to meet with every individual student in the fall to register for their winter classes and in the winter to register for their spring classes. So the faculty members in the halls will coordinate basically a program, and a program is usually a designated time in a designated space where students can come. And so we co-host a program with our advisors. So if students need help registering for their courses, they can come to this program and work with us and some Drawman. So we coordinate all of this for the Drawman Center advisors to actually come to the residence hall and help students figure out what classes to take. We also partner with the Study Abroad office. And so our study abroad, you have to apply the year before you go. So most students go study abroad in the fall of their junior year, which means that they need to apply in the fall of their sophomore year. And so if your first year student knows they definitely want to study abroad, we host information sessions in the fall. And that's usually more targeted for sophomores who are applying that fall. But we definitely get freshmen who come who want to learn more about the process. And then we'll do another info session in the spring quarter for first year students who will then be sophomores in the following fall, and then they will be applying then. We also partner with our career center. So anytime there's a career fair or any kinds of offerings from the career center, we will disseminate that information via the residence halls. Every residence hall has some sort of a newsletter that students receive electronically. It's emailed to them every Sunday, and they will get this newsletter, and that will have all of the activities going on in that specific hall as well as across campus. So please urge your student to look out for that email from their residence hall once they arrive, because that will give them a ton of things to do across the week, that week on campus. And so we partner with the Career Center. So we will bring um, career focused programs into the halls in the winter quarter. So these might look like how to make a LinkedIn profile and, build it out. What should you include? Sometimes that's exploring different career paths. Sometimes that's doing like an assessment of what your strengths are so that you can better identify what types of career paths are a good fit for the type of personality or the strengths that you have. And so we partner with the Career Center doing that. And then something I am actively working on exploring this summer is to look into bringing, so we have a tutoring center on campus. We have the Hub Writing Center and also a Mathematics Learning Center. And those are typically, run in a specific office on campus. But I am working on trying to bring tutors to the residence halls in the evenings to help students with their math and their writing. And so that's a program that I'm actively working on putting together. And so I think I have made some inroads, and I believe that we'll have a few of the RLCs, residence halls, piloting some office hours from some student tutors who will come in the evenings to help students with math and writing. And then obviously, the faculty directors are around. Their requirements are they have to be present for at least 1 hour in the halls in the evenings every week. So whether that's us kind of walking around or hosting a program or going to other programs, there's opportunities for the students to sort of connect with us informally as well. So in addition to sort of the academic programming, we sometimes partner with our CFs or our RAs to do social programs. So, sometimes these are programs related to how students can maintain their well-being. It's in the fall quarter, it's really an emphasis on learning about other campus resources and how to access them, bringing in student organizations and other students, and really to help them also learn how to take a break from studying, because part of college is also that social aspect, and the transition for it to be successful. Obviously, we want students to be academically successful, but making friends and finding things that they enjoy doing and finding a community of people is also really important for that transition to college. And so again, our goal in the RLCs is really to create opportunities for students to develop connections. That's connections within their communities, across campus, connections to their learning, to the university, and to others, and hopefully to also build connections beyond the university. So I love to connect students with alumni. So I definitely, if a student tells me, hey, I'm interested in this, and I know an alumni who either lived in my residence hall or an alumni who majored in my in communication and has graduated, I will connect a student with that student. And so this is kind of the key reason why we have this whole RLC program with all these different staff living in the residence halls, and including the faculty member. Is sometimes there's just so much information coming at students via email that sometimes just an offhand conversation can lead to very cool things for a student's experience. And that has definitely happened for me with students who have lived in my residence hall, as well as for the other faculty members who have made these connections with students and been able to connect them to other things across campus or other people across campus. And we really believe that connections allow students to feel supported, especially when they face challenges. And so the more we can emphasize helping students build these connections the first and second quarter of their time at Santa Clara, then as they get into more difficult classes or start encountering other kinds of situations, that they have a support network in place and they know who they can turn to for help and when they run into any challenges. And so we're just so excited to work with your student in the RLCs. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there's some way that we can support your student. But that concludes my sort of formal presentation, and I'm definitely happy to answer any questions that anybody has about the RLCs.
Amazing, Chan. So while I work on allowing them to unmute themselves, I'm going to treat some of the questions in the chat like a Q&A between the two of us. So the first question is there RLCs for transfer students, including juniors?
So transfer students are not assigned an RLC, but if your student would like to be included in one, we can facilitate that. My email is displayed here. Please, feel free to email me. I believe there are other types of ways for transfer students to be engaged. There's like a transfer student, like I think it's like a student club and a student union. If your transfer student is a second year, then they'll definitely be included in an RLC. But if they're coming in as a junior or a senior, I think that the sort of transfer student group might be more fitting for them because they were with other upper class students, because the RLCs are all first and second year students. And then all commuter students who are first years are assigned to an RLC as well, and they have access to all of the programs that are being offered in the RLC that they are assigned to.
Great. The next question is, are some of the RLCs larger than others based on the size of the residence hall? If so,
Yes.
okay. And
Yeah.
then
Okay.
follow up, if so, are there more faculty directors in the larger residence halls like SWIG? So there's a similar student to staff ratio.
Yeah. So there are some RLCs that are a lot larger than others. But we don't have extra faculty, but we do have extra student community facilitators in the larger building. So the way we assign community facilitators or RAs is based on the number of students who live in each RLC. However, there is only one faculty member in each RLC. I We used to have more, but through the years the program has gotten streamlined. But I am hoping to create a program where we have maybe not a live-in faculty member, but like sort of a faculty fellow. So for the larger RLCs, we might have a faculty member who kind of can support in some of these ways, but they are not live-in. So that is something that is on the table right now, that the provost office needs to give me an answer on.
Great. Before I go into the next question, I do want to tell our audience that I did just drop a ton of questions and answers into the chat. So if you want to review those were some of the questions that our guests, submitted as part of the registration. So those are there. Again, this conversation was mostly about RLCs and not necessarily the full on-campus living experience. So those answers are there for you. But I'll give it back to Chan and ask, is the RLC a subset community of the larger residence hall it resides in, or does the entire residence hall participate in the activities of the RLC?
So the entire residence hall is the RLC. Obviously, we can't force any student to participate in the program. So what we do is we advertise the programs through flyers, like paper flyers throughout the building, as well as this weekly newsletter that every RLC has. So it's really up to your student to participate, which is again, where you all come in, because I definitely have talked to parents who and students who will say, "Oh, I was so bored that first week. I didn't know what there was to do." Meanwhile, we're like downstairs and there's a group of students in our, main common room doing a program. And so I think if your student calls you your first quarter on campus and says, "Oh, I'm so bored, I don't know what to do," please remind them that they are in an RLC and that RLC has different kinds of programs and resources for them to get connected to.
Great. Are there specific residence halls for students playing sports for the school?
So the athletics department will handles all of this, the student athletes, and they tend to be put in, I think, the suite style dorms, but I don't know. That might have changed in the last couple of years. But it's not all the athletes are in like one specific dorm. They're kind of spread out across a few of them. They're intermixed with non-athlete students.
Great. And then are students allowed to go to events in RLCs that they are not part of?
Yes, definitely. If you're like, we never turn students away if they want to, if they see something interesting and they want to come in. So they can definitely go to programs in other RLCs. Usually, how that works is they have a friend in the other RLC, and that's kind of how they find out about the program. And so in my RLC, there's always students from other residence halls coming in, studying in our spaces. So that is absolutely okay.
And then earlier in the conversation, Chan, I think you mentioned tutors or getting kind of paired up with the drama center. I'm not sure if this is directly related to your area, but someone had to ask, are the tutors TA students or professors, and how do these students book those sessions?
Yeah, so we have two primary tutoring centers on campus. One is called the Hub Writing Center, which is specifically to help you with writing. And so the it's directed by a faculty member, but all of the tutors, the Hub, they're called Hub Writing Partners. All of those are students, but obviously they're students who have, done well in their English classes and have to submit a resume and a portfolio. And so those students, you can book an appointment. There's also drop-in hours. The Hub has their own website and links where students can find out more information and learn how to book an appointment. For the math, it's called the Math Learning Center. And that's actually run by our math department. The tutors are all students who either are math majors or STEM majors who have just performed extremely well in math classes. So obviously they're not going to, hire a student who didn't get good grades in the math class and can't demonstrate that they know how to do the math problems. And so they have a physical space that students can go drop in at, and they can also make an appointment. So both of these sort of tutoring centers for math and writing have a location on campus that students can go to. But what I am proposing is that they actually, a few of the tutors can come to the residence halls in the evening to provide this. So in the residence halls, there probably won't be appointments. I'm imagining we're just going to try it out this year. It'll probably be more drop in, like, hey, in my residence hall in Finn, on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9, there will be a math tutor in this study room. If you need help with math, please stop by. So that's kind of how we're imagining it for the residence halls. But in the home space of those two support centers, you can absolutely drop by and schedule office hours. But I believe their tutoring hours are kind of more normal business hours. And so I'm trying to do this sort of more evening programming tutoring.
Great. Okay, so everyone, two more questions from the chat, and then I will just open it up to anyone to come off mute. But I just want to make sure we address all of these. So next question, Chan, is what is the distinction between the role of faculty advisor and the TIRs who live in the RLC, so the therapist in residence?
So the therapists have their licensed clinical therapists. So what they do is more emotional support. Like if your student needs to see a therapist, they should go to the therapist in residence. And if they have an academic concern that's like, I don't know how to drop a class, can you please help me? Or I'm concerned about my grades. I mean, obviously, some of those things are intertwined, but I wouldn't feel equipped to help a student who is maybe like managing a difficult situation emotionally. And then, if I encounter a student who comes to me for an academic issue and I believe that they might benefit from the therapist in residence, then we do at Santa Clara what we call a warm handoff, where I might call the therapist in residence or send them an email and say, hey, I'm meeting with such and such student right now, and I really think they would benefit from seeing you. And then I would sort of introduce the student to the therapist in residence. So the therapist in residence is a therapist and they are licensed, a licensed therapist, whereas I don't have the licensure to provide therapy. But obviously, sometimes things come up, and I am sort of like, sometimes I tell the students in my residence hall, like, I'm kind of the cool aunt in the building. Like I have a lot of experience, but I don't have any like I'm not here to like get you in trouble. Like, I'm not here to write you up. I'm not on call at night. Like, I don't do any of those things. I'm truly here just to make sure that academically you're succeeding. And obviously, we believe that you have to be socially and emotionally healthy to academically succeed. So my area kind of bleeds into that, but we do have professional therapists who can support students for, any kinds of issues that would need that level of support.
Great. And the last two questions in the chat are a little different, but I think they're pretty short answers. So the first one is, are there any work study jobs in the RLCs? And then the second is, are there family visiting hours for these spaces?
So for work study, we have a position called desk assistants, that they usually are. We have every RLC has a front desk that's open from 5 p.m. till in some residence halls it ends at midnight, in some residence halls it ends at 1 a.m. But there's a person at the front desk who, if a student needs like to check something out. So we have pots and pans, vacuums, things like that. They need like a trash bag for their room. We have a front desk assistant. Those you have to be at least a sophomore to apply for because you have to have lived in a residence hall and like know how the residence hall works, or at least just know where things are. But and those I do not believe are, I think work study qualifies for those, but work study positions are available at the library, at the Benson Center, which is our student center, and you students can definitely find those opportunities on Workday, which is sort of our campus platform for anything personnel related. And then, can you repeat the second question, Stephen?
Sure. They're curious about if there are any specific family visiting hours.
Not necessarily. The resident is just responsible for whoever comes to visit them and would have to make sure that they let their guests in and make sure their guests leave. And so there aren't specific hours. It's just up to you and your resident to kind of figure out how you want to do visiting.
Great. So those are all of the questions in the chat. I've addressed all of the questions that were submitted upon registration. So this is a great time to unmute, raise your hand, add more questions to the chat if you'd like. But we have about 20-ish minutes or so to address any questions that you might have. So a question just came in about, will we be able to visit the RLCs during orientation? I can address
Yeah,
that if you'd like, or you can,
yeah,
Chan.
go for it. Yeah, go
Okay.
for it. And then if I have anything to add, I will.
Sure. So there is an RLC presentation for both students on that track and as well as the parent track. There are opportunities to hear from the resident directors to talk about what the space looks like, an overview of some of the programming, the social programming that specific residence director offers. And then you'll actually be able to see parts of the common areas in the space, but you won't necessarily be able to wander the halls, visit the specific rooms, just because we do have camps and conferences on site as well. But for the most part, you will be able to see the building, be inside of the building, and then learn a little bit from the residence directors. Anything you want to add, Chan?
Yeah, and so at that presentation, you'll also learn more specifically about who is in these roles in your student's RLC. So who is the faculty member, who is the therapist in residence who serves that hall. So you'll actually get some faces and specific names of the people who will be working in the residence halls that your students are living in.
Great.
But
Anything else? Anyone want to
yeah,
come off
just
mute?
a follow-up question with that one. But we won't be able to know the roommates of our students when we come to orientation, right?
That is correct.
But we will find out which RLC they will be though.
Yes, you will
Okay.
learn what RLC your student is in when you come to orientation, but the specific room assignment and roommate you won't find out, I think, until August sometime. It's like mid-August, I think, is the date.
Okay.
Yep, mid
Thank
to
you.
late August, that your student will receive an email from housing identifying which room they'll be in the specific residence hall and then who their roommate or roommates are.
Claudia, can you come real quick?
Yeah, and I know that folks like that's obviously the thing that you want to find out, but please trust me when I say that trying to bring 1,600 something plus students to campus is a huge enterprise. And trust me when I say there's like dozens of folks working on this behind the scenes, and we do want to share that information with you as quickly as possible, but there are so many moving parts. So, mid-August, late August would be probably the soonest that we could share that information with you, given everything that's happening behind the scenes.
Great. One question just came in through the chat. Are residence halls or dorms co-ed by floor? And then what's the bathroom situation like?
Yeah, so there most of our residence halls are co-ed, just mixed on every floor. I believe we have one, if a student requested it, we have one floor in one of the residence halls that's all female and one residence hall that's all male. It depends on, for the bathrooms, it depends on what type of dorm they're in. So if they're in what we call a communal style, which is it's, a big building and then there's like a shared bathroom at the end of the hall, there is usually one like male bathroom and set of showers and then a separate female bathroom and set of showers. But the rooms, sort of will be mixed. Every room will have a sink in it. So, you don't have to walk all the way down the hall to like brush your teeth. So there's like a sink and vanity area in every room. But they will have to, if they're in a communal style dorm, go to the shared bathroom at the end of the hall. We also have some dorms that are what we call suite style. And so that is basically there's two rooms, and those two rooms will share a bathroom that's, sort of in the middle. It's like a Jack and Jill style kind of setup. And so there's a toilet and a shower, with separate doors that students can use. So that would be shared by two rooms, which would either be 4 students if it's two doubles, or potentially sometimes 6 students if it's two triples that are attached to each other. And so that's kind of how that works.
Wonderful. I'm addressing some of the other ones that came in. Um, I'll just say this out loud since I'm in the middle of typing it, but someone had asked if students meet someone during orientation that they might want to room with, can a roommate request still be made? I just spoke with our housing team, and unfortunately, the answer is no. They've been working on housing assignments and pairing students based on the preference form and kind of personality test that they took as part of the housing application, and they've been trying to pair students since May. So unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to request someone that they met at orientation.
There is a room change request period that opens in the fall. So, it's we do want students to just give it a shot, right? Like, hey, come in, try this experience. And if they really are not, it's not working out with their roommate, there is an opportunity. I think it's like week 3 or 4 in the fall quarter where they can request a room change.
And then I did drop a link to the room change process in the chat at one point. I'll try to drop it in again. But I will ask this question, Chan, if you can start the answer, potentially I will add anything that you might not have. But someone had asked, do students stay in the same RLC for their sophomore year or can they switch?
So the way that we do the RLCs for your second year is if the student um, wants to stay in the RLC, they can definitely they have preference to stay in the same RLC that they were in their first year. If they find other folks from the RLC who also want to stay in the RLC again, they can sort of apply for their rooming situation for the second year together. And if you have a group of students who lived in that RLC who are applying to stay in the RLC, it's usually a guarantee that they will get to stay in that RLC.
And otherwise, the housing selection process is something that takes place in late winter quarter or early.
I think they have to fill out their applications in winter quarter, and then I think the room selection is like early spring quarter.
Right. And in the room selection, your time and date of when you get to select and all those fun logistical things are on a lottery system, so it's very
Yeah,
randomized.
yeah,
Um, so your students may experience challenges as they navigate that selection for their sophomore year.
yeah.
Um, and to clarify, Chan, can students change RLCs, not necessarily just rooms during that room change period?
Yeah, they can, if they don't want to stay in, whichever RLC they got assigned, they can also request to change. Obviously, not all requests can be honored. I mean, it's sort of like, kind of depends on, like, let's say someone wants to leave Kira RLC and go to Magis. If, it happens to work out where someone from Magis wants to go to Kira, then, we can make that happen. But I think the housing office does try to honor as many requests that are reasonable that they can, but obviously they can't accommodate everyone who has a request.
And then I just want to add, it's an important time to give your student the ability to experience each residence hall. They offer a different experience, and everyone's experience is different based on what they're looking for in a space for living, whether that's more of a social environment, whether that's a more, siloed, quiet space for them to focus on the academics. But there's so much that goes into a residence hall and outside of just living there. So it's helpful to encourage them to just be open-minded about where they start off. And then if they truly don't want to be in this residence hall or they don't mesh well with their roommate, then guide them to these resources that we're providing to you all, but also have them give these spaces a chance. They all are unique and offer so many different things.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize enough, like, I mean, part of helping the students establish a foundation so that they can be successful the rest of their 4 years at Santa Clara is helping them learn how to be resilient in their first year. And so I think, like sometimes a student will come to me and I don't like this class, and it's like, well, you've only been in it for 1 week. Sometimes you have to give something a little bit longer before you just sort of like throw your hands up in the air, because that's not what is going to help you establish the tools and the resiliency you need to be successful in your 4 years at Santa Clara and beyond.
Great. And then someone has asked, so if I'm understanding correctly, all the freshman students will reside in the 8 RLCs, correct?
Yes.
And my caveat to that is those students who have been identified as commuters and approved for commuters, while they will be living at home, they will still have an RLC on campus to attend RLC type events.
Yes.
So quick question. So the freshmen, they're still young. As parents, we worry a little bit. How will that happen? Will they be able to shop in the grocery stores around and come back to the RLCs? Be able, how is the distance? How will they manage that? How do usually students manage that? Thank you.
So luckily we have a Safeway that's right next to campus. It's next to my residence hall, Finn Residence Hall, and the area around campus is pretty safe. It's a residential area. And then on campus in Benson Center in the basement, there's also sort of like a mini student market called the Cellar, and that has a lot of student basics. Food, laundry, detergent, like things that students would need. There's a little store on campus where students could do that as well.
And then I'll add on a weekly basis, one of our chartered student organizations, I can't remember which one, but they host a weekly Sunday trip to Trader Joe's. So just if your student keeps an eye out on their email, they'll see content related to that trip. So if that was of interest, they could also participate in that. And that's where an entire group of students kind of go out there, make a day out of it, and then come back. So there's opportunities to get to grocery stores. Any other questions? Any burning questions top of mind? If your student's sitting by your side, do they have any questions? We're here to answer anything you might have. Great. I love silence, so I could sit here the whole time with you all for the next 10 minutes, but we won't do that. I will just say the closing statement. If any questions come up between now and when we actually close, please let me know. But the recording will process, and I'll try to get it up to into our YouTube channel within the next day or two. My goal is always to get it out within 1 to 2 business days, though we are starting our first orientation session tomorrow, and I'm part of that planning team. So I might not get it there, but I will try my best. Otherwise, um, we will see some of you later this month. If you have any other questions, please always feel free to reach out to either Chan specifically for RLC or the orientation at su.edu email for orientation specific questions. And I do appreciate all of you still chiming in with questions, so that's great. I'm glad I got my closing statement out so that we can close on time if these go a little long. But so for students with accommodations that have requested a single, what does the housing and bathroom situation look like? Chan, are you able to address that?
Yeah, again, it depends on what residence hall they are assigned to. So we have a limited number of singles that have their own bathroom attached, but that is a very small number. And that usually goes to students with, extreme needs that have demonstrated that they absolutely need that. We have some single spaces where there is like a shared bathroom. So again, it like housing really tries to do their best to accommodate the requests, but we don't have an endless supply of some of the more highly desired types of spaces.
Great. You spoke to this a little bit, but is it guaranteed if students want to move RLCs for their sophomore year that they can?
They can definitely move RLCs, but they might not be guaranteed like the one that they want, right? So if someone lives in, let's say, Campisi their first year, which is a more communal style dorm, and they want to go to like Graham their second year, they can definitely leave Campisi. That's a guarantee, but they might not end up in the residence hall that is their first choice.
Great. I'm going to answer this question. Is there a class schedule out for fall? So, unlike high school, we don't actually assign classes for your students in their first term. There are a couple that they are pre-enrolled in, yes, and those are should be viewable in their workday account now, but they'll pick the rest of their courses when they're on site if they're here for the July orientation during the course enrollment portion, or if they're attending the session in September, they'll register virtually in July for classes. So no, the class schedule isn't out because your student will be building that schedule. Um, my student had submitted the immunization records on his part. Does he need to send an email to anyone else? Nope, not at this time. Someone will reach out if they aren't approved for some reason, but as long as they did that, they are good to go. Chan, do you want to talk, or are you able to talk about how does the food card work on campus?
Yeah, so students, you buy a meal plan with the housing package, and basically we work on like a points system where they can go. Our food hall, we only have one main food hall on campus, so there's like other satellite cafes that they could use their access card at. And so pretty much they have a certain number of points every quarter, and then they can go to different stations. So we have like a pasta station, we have a salad bar, we have, basically it's almost like a mall food court, I would say. And then they can kind of order whatever they want, and it costs a certain number of points, and then they can swipe the card, and so it'll just deduct the number of points that they spent. And they can also use that card at the grocery store on campus. And then there's also like a flex point system where you could also purchase flex points, which then would allow your student to eat at a few eateries near campus that we have partnered with who are willing to take our flex dollars. But you can if then there's quite a few options on campus. So there's like a coffee shop. If they want coffee, they could get smoothies, they could get salad, they could get, pizza. Like there's all kinds of options that they could use their food card through the point system.
Amazing. Just trying to get through all these. Are you able to speak to the gluten-free options? I can talk about that too. I know we're getting a little off topic, but I think we're good resources to answer some of these questions.
Yeah. Yeah, so we the folks who provide our food on campus, we contract with Bon Appetit, which is like a well-known organization throughout California, and they run a lot of cafes at like organiz like job organizations. Like I know they run it at like Genentech, which is a biotech company here, but they run a lot of these cafes that are at schools and different kinds of workplaces. And over the past 2 years, they have made a very concerted effort to ensure that they offer foods for different types of dietary needs. So there's now a specific food station for students who have specific dietary needs. So that might be, you're gluten intolerant, or you can't have acids, or, whatever it is. There is a food station that sort of can accommodate these more specific dietary needs.
Great. And the one thing that I will add to that is from my background in food service, I actually used to work in campus dining before this, but we in the dining world like to refer to gluten-free as gluten-friendly just because there's a lot of trace contact within the kitchen. But for the most part, the dining service team does work really hard to make sure things are separated. I think Chan mentioned that specific station that are free of the top 9 allergens. So we do have processes in place to ensure that there is food that your students can access. Another question that just came in was, if a parent can't make it to the orientation in person, is there anything significant that they would miss out on the agenda? And would you have recordings? While we won't have recordings, you won't miss too much. That's the whole purpose of these webinars. We understand that coming out to Santa Clara isn't the most viable for some of our folks who need to go to work. So we will try to get as much of the information out as possible. We might even summarize some of these sessions. But there's always other opportunities to hear from these specific departments, such as at Welcome Weekend, which aligns with Move-In, or Family Weekend in February. So there's many opportunities to continue hearing from us. And I hope that answers your question. And the last question that came in is, do you allow food or grocery deliveries in the residence halls?
So I think that I have seen students like get drop-offs. I think the key is that they have to indicate which residence hall that they're in. So like, like if they want to order like Instacart or anything like that, it's like they just have to clearly communicate with whoever's delivering their stuff, like where they are. That tends to be the biggest issue is students don't specifically say, or they don't call the person or text them like, hi, like I'm in this residence hall, and like clearly direct, because these Uber drivers or these Instacart drivers don't know our campus. And so the number of times I'll see someone carrying a bag of food around trying to find the right hall is a lot. And so it is definitely allowed, but I think your student just needs to know that they need to be very clear on the delivery instructions, and they need to go and meet the person to grab it from them, because all of our buildings are locked, and so the delivery person won't have access to put it in the lobby, and we don't have like a front desk person for someone to receive the deliveries for your student.
Yep, and then that just needs to be coordinated with the student because the mailroom will not accept Instacart deliveries or Walmart deliveries. So just make sure your student coordinates if that is a service that they are interested in. Um, we are out of time, but if you will please just send any more questions that you have to the orientation@scu.edu inbox. We'll make sure to address them in a timely manner as best as we can. Again, we will record, or once this recording finishes and processes, we'll try to get it up into the YouTube channel within the next day or so. Again, we're going into orientation tomorrow, so wish us good luck. Hopefully, we'll see you all soon, and thank you for participating with us today. Take care. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you.